notice I just answer questions differently when a podcast host asks them than I do when I'm sometimes just teaching you guys here on my solo-based shows. Hey there, and welcome to the Roadmap to Referrals podcast, a show that proves you can generate referrals without asking or manipulation. I'm your host, Stacey Brown Randall. I'm a card-carrying member of the Business Failure Club, have taught my Referrals Without Asking methodology and strategy to clients in more than 14 countries around the world. And my mission is to help you unleash a referral explosion by leveraging the science of referrals and respecting your relationships. This message is just for you. Is it time you worked with me? If you're a longtime listener of this podcast, then you've heard me mention my Building a Referable Business coaching program. And you probably have heard me say that it's only one of 3 ways that you can work with me. But it is actually my most popular way to work with me. The Building a Referable Business coaching program, the mission is to help you double, triple, or quadruple your referrals in less than a year. All of my referral strategies, feedback direct from me, go at your own pace, unlimited access to me. I think it's time you checked it out. Just go to staceybrownrandall.com/referable. All right, welcome to the Summer of 2025 podcast series. This year, we're doing a podcast takeover. Okay, before I get into what a podcast takeover is, let me just give you a little bit of background information on our summer series. So a number of years ago, I started taking the summer months and the episodes that run somewhere between around early June to early August and creating a special series that I referred to as the summer series. We've tackled different topics and we've had different guests on during the summer series. For instance, a couple years ago, I did a whole series on the referable client experience, which is quite timely that I mention it now since my second book will be out on the referable client experience later this fall. But I've taken a topic and I've broken it down over a long period of time. And in podcast land, I really feel like a long period of time, like to do a series, is anything where you're doing more than 7 episodes. So I have had summer series that have gone from like 6 or 7 up to 15 episodes. So we have done the myths of referrals. We have done the referable client experience. I have also had other business owners come on. We did a series one summer where business owners came on and they talked about how they solved a problem in their business that they were not an expert in. So for example, had I been on the podcast, I wasn't because I'm the host, right? But I would have been on the podcast talking about how I solved a problem in my business that had nothing to do with referrals, because that's what I'm an expert in. So that was a really cool series. I really enjoyed it. We also had a series on where I had experts come on about talking about, as business owners, how important it is for us to protect our mindset. Usually, the summer series goes off topic. We don't always cover referrals. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't during our summer series. And this year, we're doing a podcast takeover. So what exactly is a podcast takeover? Well, in my world, that is where I have invited other podcast hosts to allow me to air the episode that we did when they interviewed me on their show. So they are giving me permission to share the episode from their podcast, but they're interviewing me on it on my podcast. So why? Why did I decide to do a podcast takeover? Well, there's a couple of reasons why. Sometimes I find that I answer things differently when I'm asked a question by a podcast host. It could just be the way they ask the question. It could be what we're focusing on in our conversation. It could just be because the podcast interview happened on a Thursday, right? But sometimes I just realize that I actually answer questions a little bit differently when a host asks the question. And I wanted you guys to be able to hear that. And it is different. I notice I just answer questions differently when a podcast host asks them than I do when I'm sometimes just teaching you guys here on my solo-based shows. I also wanted to share business and life stuff that I don't just talk about on this podcast, but sometimes other hosts, their shows aren't about business always, or they're not always about referrals or business growth. And so sometimes their shows are on topics or areas that has nothing to do with referrals. And when I'm on their show, you just get to hear a different side of me. You just get to hear me talk about business and life and the things that I struggle with, because the podcast hosts, that's what they're asking about. So if somebody else wasn't asking those questions, you probably wouldn't hear me talk about it here on this podcast. So you're in for a real treat with those couple of episodes. Not all the episodes are 100% referral-based conversations, and that was important to me. All of them touch on referrals on some level, so it's not like you're taking the summer off from learning about referrals. You will definitely hear episodes on referrals. You'll be able to tell by the titles. Actually, I think all the titles talk about it being from a referral-based subject, but not all the conversations are centered around referrals. So I think that's cool. So you get to see some other things discussed as well. And I specifically pulled a few episodes from years ago. So I may have been on a podcast host episode like back in 2021 or 2022. I specifically pulled a few from a few years ago because I want you to hear me talk about what's changed in how I teach or how I answer questions. And also, just as equally important, what hasn't changed. There are some episodes where I still explain one specific thing the exact same way today as I explained it 4 or 5 years ago, because referrals are evergreen and some things just don't change. So you will hear me repeat a few answers as well. I don't know, maybe by the end of the series, you'll be able to like recite the answer yourself because you've heard me answer that question. But I do think it's important for you to see episodes where I was interviewed maybe this year in 2025, maybe last year in 2024, but some of these going back 4 or 5 years ago. And so you'll hear those conversations as well. So I am very excited for our podcast takeover. And you'll have to let me know how this goes. I've never done it before. I don't know if I'll do it again. If it goes over well and you guys love it, I certainly will. I'll need to be on some more episodes, I guess. I need to be on some more other people's podcasts as a guest interview, so that I have more to run maybe next summer or the summer after. We'll see. So I hope that you will join me next week for our first guest host episode with Jay Berkowitz as we discuss the 10 golden rules of getting referrals without even asking. Here's a fun note about this episode. You guys will have to tell me what you think. Right before we hit record, like, usually when you're doing a guest interview, you hop on with the host first, you talk about the housekeeping stuff, like you go over anything that they need to know, and then you hit record. So we're in like the green room, so to speak. And right before we hit record, he was like, hey, there's something different I want to do with this episode. Can you come up with a top 10 list, like the top 10 golden rules of referrals? And you have like 7 minutes. And I was like, yeah, sure, I can do that. So I'm actually pretty impressed with the list and how quickly I came up with that top 10 list. I mean, let's be honest, I've been teaching this stuff for 12 years. So it wasn't hard to come up with a top 10 list. What was actually hard was narrowing it down and figuring out what I had to leave out. So I hope you'll enjoy that episode with Jay. Other hosts include Larry Kendall from Ninja Selling, Michelle Williams from Profit as a Choice, Luann Nigera from A Well-Designed Business. We also welcome our friend from Down Under, Jay Tinkler from Australia. And we have a few clients where they have interviewed me on their podcast that we are featuring as part of this takeover, because you need to know them and you need to know their podcast too, because their podcasts rock. We've got GSD with Jenny, Kicking Beep, not going to say the bad word, Kicking Beep and Taking Names with Marlon Griffin, and Do Good Work with Raul Hernandez. So I hope that you enjoy these episodes. You will notice with some of the episodes, some of them are industry specific and some are not. So some of them are, we're talking more likely the conversation and the questions and my answers are being directed at, say, realtors or interior designers or coaches and consultants, and or attorneys. In some cases, it's not like that at all. It's like more blanket, more general business owners in general. So you'll also get to see the similarities and the differences between the industries as well, depending on what the questions that I am being asked. So I'm excited for you to meet these hosts. Who knows? You might just find another podcast you need to listen to and start subscribing to their podcast and add it to your listen list. That would be amazing. On the show notes page for each episode, I will link to all the places where you can learn more about the host podcast, more about their business, and of course, how to connect with them and follow them on social media as well. All right. So I hope you're ready because we are kicking off next week with our podcast takeover, and we have a great roundup of episodes to go. So if you enjoyed this episode, let me know. If you enjoyed the podcast takeover series, I really want to know what you think about it as well. And if you're looking for more information on what's coming up, head on over to the show notes page for this episode, staceybrownrandall.com/365. That's 365 for episode 365. Okay, you're now in the know. You know what you need to know about our podcast takeover. And we are kicking off next week with episode 366. So be here or be square. All right. We are back with another great episode next week. I can't wait for this podcast takeover series to officially kick off. And of course, they're all created with you and your needs in mind. Until then, you know what to do, my friend. Take control of your referrals and build a referable business. Bye for now.